Welcome to the Thought to Action podcast, presented by the London Center for Policy Research, where we delve deeply into important issues, examine ideas, discuss solutions, and put forth our thoughts into action. I'm Lieutenant Colonel retired Tony Shaffer and President of the London Center, and I am your host for today. If you like our videos, please join our Patreon, like, share, subscribe, do all those things that help build and complete our ability to influence favorably the algorithm. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, through Thought to Action podcast.com. With that said, with no further ado, one of the people I follow constantly on social media and on his YouTube channel is, he needs no real introduction, so I'll let him do his own introduction. Jeremy, go ahead.
Yeah, well, what's going on? It's Jeremy from the Quartering and Midwestly. Happy to be here to have a bit of a discussion with you. And I'm trying to do more of this lately. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you for doing this. And I've watched with a great deal of interest just the way you've spoken, I think, what most would consider objective truth about things that everybody can look at and see. And yet you become like targeted because you just simply want to say, look, this is the way it is. And people have a hard time with it. It's just truly amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think that I've been battle hardened, being doing YouTube and engaging in social media for so long, but yeah, it's a different world out there, and I have fun with it.
So there's an overlap, I think, between our two worlds. I do policy. I'm a retired spy, done a lot of interesting things, but a lot of people don't know I'm actually kind of a closet geek. And I always appreciate your talking about games and kind of the way games are adapted. So I think one that came out recently where there's an overlap is Mass Effect Legendary Edition. And I've watched your videos on it, and I appreciated your point of view. I'm playing it. I'm still in the first game. And I don't, because I got a job I got to do, so I don't have as much time to spend as I'd like. But I have found Mass Effect 1 to be hugely improved as a game. I mean, the graphics, the dialogue is still there, but I think it allows you to kind of be much more immersed in a improved environment. So what do you think of the game? What's your initial impression so far? Outside, we'll get to the Woke in a second.
Excellent remaster. I would say that any fan of the original series would, the game kind of already held up,
yes,
but they improved in a lot of ways that made sense, and I think they did a pretty good job fit and finish with the remaster.
Yeah. So I'm in the first game, and I'll get to the second eventually. But one of the things I noticed when you were talking about is Shepard is the main character for those who don't follow the trilogy, the game trilogy, and there was this effort to cancel Shepard. Ooh,
yeah.
And so I'm sitting there. My son's a fireman. He came up through the Scouts. He's a 26-year-old guy who enjoys gaming. He's also on Steam with me, and it's like the millennials, not all, but millennials seem to have this aversion to the way the world works. And one of those ways the world works, and I'm speaking as a voice of, did 30 and a half years in the military, there's a certain level of force that's required to defend one's equities. Or if someone is an aggressor, you got to go against them. And in this case, in the case of Mass Effect, there's some very clear bad guys. The bad guys are out to destroy the universe. And Shepard, lo and behold, has to make some choices. He can be a paragon or a rebel, and I get that. But people are somehow surprised more now than when the game came out that, oh my gosh, there's shooting in the game, and it's violent. So what do you make of this kind of like dystopia of like people like, yeah, we need to cancel Shepard? I mean, it makes no sense.
Well, I think that first and foremost, most video games now get pushed through this like prism that breaks up. You know how prisms work, where the light comes in and then they get like dissected into all these various talking points, because from a media perspective, in my opinion, major video game media outlets, the people that work there desperately want to write about politics,
right?
But they write about video games. And usually that disdain is very apparent in how they'll refer to gamers as like a derogatory type thing. And these people desperately want to write for CNN or I don't know, one of these other dying media outlets, but they can't because there's only a few jobs. Honestly, that world is pretty gate kept.
Yeah.
Unless you have huge VC money and you start something like maybe the Post Millennial or something like that, where you're doing your own work. Even Vice is, crumbling. So I think with Mass Effect, we have like a couple of the standard things people whine about, like the space police. They don't like that.
Yes.
They don't like Shepard, even though that character, you could choose which way you went down that road, but they don't like that.
Right.
And they were going in there and they're like, oh, somebody's rear end is in the camera focus. Let's make sure we take time to work on that. This is all a productive or a byproduct of the modern gaming media really wanting to write about politics and not video games.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I noticed that they were upset about not having enough gay choices. I think that was one of their gripes.
Yeah.
And the whole issue of I guess they changed the face of one of the characters. She was too whatever. So it just seems to me that they are more worried about how to make a social statement than comment on how good the game is and how much it holds up over the decades. Is that fair? Kind of.
Yeah. Well, the digital currency for this video game is good is really poor. But for this video game is transphobic is like 1,000 free retweets. And so a lot of times they'll arrive at a point or a point they want to make and then back into it and say like, oh, there isn't enough of this or enough of that. And then what happens is game developers acquiesce or bend the knee, and then it's another thing. It's never enough with folks that live their life in this, got to be an awful, awful existence. But like the people that just want to ruin everything and be upset by everything, they still wield a good bit of power. They're a vocal minority, but they're a well-organized and can appear very loud at times. We've seen this with Gina Carano,
right.
Her going down the exact same route as saying the exact same things as, or very similar things like Pedro Pascal. About 2,000 people on Twitter get upset, she gets fired.
Right.
It doesn't take much to feel very loud on Twitter, and so that's where they're at. They want those retweets, and there isn't a lot of traffic around. Hey, this game's good. I don't even cover when video games, like when a video game comes out and is good, there's nothing to say about it, and that's honestly probably a bigger problem.
Well, to me, look, I enjoyed the playthrough of Mass Effect 2, and I hooked up with Jack. I thought it was pretty cool, and I think she's a cool character. And maybe I'll do it again this playthrough. I don't know, but it was fun. It was like fun to have kind of a spectrum of things going on. It's not just shoot 'em up. It's like you really got to engage in kind of a social skill. You got to kind of do a very rough, I don't know, a romance. I don't know if you'd call it a romance.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, the interactions of it. Yeah. The story of it is what's great. Yeah.
But that's the thing is like, I don't know. Do you believe a game like that could be made again today? Because great movies like Blazing Saddles could never be made, even though that was an anti-racist movie. It made fun of racism. The woke crowd won't. And there's some great lines I could say here and it get me in a lot of trouble. We could not put this on YouTube, but it was like it was making fun of all this complete idiot homophobes, racist. They were going after all those folks, but now you can't. So do you see the same thing happening here because of the pressure on the industry to kind of comply with this milquetoast vanilla? Let's not do anything too dramatic and just kick something out that nobody will criticize.
Well, I think at the AAA gaming level, that's certainly true. Companies like Ubisoft or Naughty Dog or EA, they are living by these rules. But what's great for gamers is, first of all, retro gaming is a thing, and I love it. And there's you could probably never play all the amazing games that are on the Super Nintendo in a lifetime, and I often will retreat to older platforms and play those. But also indie studios are still a thing, and there are still great games being made that aren't kind of cookie cutter woke garbage, and you can find them still on Steam, and they can do very well. Even heck, who would have thought in 2021 Nintendo honestly still has a pretty good catalog on their Switch of games that remain relatively untouched. So the Japanese video game market is still very creative and pushing the boundaries. So I'm not pessimistic about it. I just have changed my target of who I want to buy games from. And so if Ubisoft or Naughty Dog or whomever is more concerned about the political side of their video game, that's okay. Life is super short, and I have less time than ever to play video games now. Mm-hmm. So like, I'll just play a game that maybe isn't winning game of the year, but I actually have fun playing. And so I think there are more people doing that. So I think that that's good.
That's good to know, and I'm glad to hear that, because obviously I don't have as much time as I'd like to play either, but it's always good to know that if I go out there and start kind of looking around, I'll find some things I enjoy. But one of the things I think we both would agree upon is that the whole issue of allowing people, developers, to have the freedom of what they want to produce rather than think that they have to live within a box is a bad thing. I mean, they should have that freedom to do what they need.
Yeah, they've convinced themselves that following this cookie cutter design is actually creative. They think that by addressing some, like blunt force political argument is actually being creative, when it's not. There used to be a creative. There are always people that'll say like, well, the old X-Men cartoon, that was political too, and this and that, and they're correct. The problem is the modern day narrative is so watered down, so distilled, that it isn't even nuanced. It's just literal preaching. And that is where it becomes uninteresting and lazy. And I think you get a lot of that. Like, it's the same with Hollywood films. Like, there isn't any problem with having a diverse cast, but if that's the reason I'm supposed to see your movie, then I'm not really interested. Like, tell me about good writing. And that's what all these movie critics, which are also people that desperately wish they could be writing about world politics, and they talk about all this meaningless stuff. And we see now that it's not exactly working out great for them.
No, it's not. No, and like I said, I don't. There's certain movies that will never be made again. I'm a big fan of Apocalypse Now, and look, I don't know if you watched or not, but I think that is a metaphor for a lot of the things. And that movie was all about the truth. It wasn't about
Charlie Don't Surf, right?
Yeah, Charlie Don't Surf.
Yeah.
Jeremy, don't get off the boat unless you go all the way.
That's right. Yeah, there are a lot of films that won't be remade again. There are even more films that will be altered or disclaimed because again, speaking to nuance or critical thought, like people. Like, look, The Song of the South or whatever, that movie that Disney made a million years ago. I can watch a movie and be like, whoa, like that didn't age well. But and that's fine, because I know the movie was made like in the 50s or 60s or something like that.
Context, right?
Yeah, that's almost 100 years ago. Yeah. And even in the first Bill and Ted movie, I happened to watch it when the second Bill and Ted movie came out. And I think first Bill and Ted was maybe in the 90s. Yeah. And at one point in the movie, Keanu's character calls the other guy, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, the bundle of sticks word, because it was popular to like everyone was saying it back then. It wasn't seen as like phobic or anything. Yeah. But like, I'm like, whoa, how is this movie? I saw that. I'm like, whoa, like,
have you seen the Rush Hour movies?
Yeah, I love them. Yeah,
They would never make those now.
No, Chris Tucker's like Asian stereotype jokes and stuff like that. Like, there's no way.
But they're funny. Funny.
They're funny because you understand context and know that it's like a comedic thing. He's not being literally racist.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the same thing with Blazing Saddles. Like, right. Like the jokes. Yeah. Because intent doesn't matter to people who are so used to boiling everything down to its most reductive state, because that's what they need to understand things. Like, okay, this joke is probably not okay 50 years later, but you have to understand intent. Like, Gene Wilder wasn't racist. Like, I just, and Richard Pryor, like, it's Richard Pryor, right? And yeah, like these dudes knew what they were doing or were making these jokes. They were lampooning it.
Yeah.
But like now it's
it was Cleveland Little. It was in Blazing Saddles.
Oh, Cleveland Little. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
But
that was a little before my time. But
it's okay.
I am aware of it. Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, so thank you for your time to meet today, Jeremy. It's really been I really enjoyed having you on, and I appreciate your point of view, and we appreciate you coming on a policy think tank podcast, which is probably a little bit different, but there are some overlaps here. So
bring me on to talk about Section 230 someday.
We want to do that next. And as a matter of fact, I'll try to see if I can recruit a certain congresswoman to maybe join us for a discussion on it at some point, because I think she'd be a great one to add.
Yeah.
Great. So, hey, thank you all for watching and listening to Thought to Action. If you like our program, please like, share, subscribe, join our Patreon community. Also, when you join Patreon, you can put in questions for our always spectacular Ask Us Anything question of answer session. So you guys can join us and have a great session of asking all of us senior fellows and London Center folks what we think about certain issues. So join us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and obviously go to our website, londoncenter.org. So I'm Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. We've had Jeremy from the quartering here today. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you again real soon.